Greetings friends, my name is Pavlo Stelmach and I'm glad to present for you the new episode of our daily wrap-up series. Ukraine continues to deal with the consequences of the Russian missile strike, which was on Wednesday 23rd of November. Until now, our energy workers are trying to restore electricity supply in various regions of the country. For today, a plan has been developed to turn on the electricity for 3 to 4 hours on each street, so that everyone can charge their gadgets and power banks, do laundry, or simply turn on the light when doing household chores. And this is after almost 2 days without electricity. And according to preliminary data, it will last at least several days more. But Ukrainians still do not lose heart, support each other, and rejoice when electricity just appeared in the apartment.
Our energy system has already passed the most difficult stage after this attack. All regions are restored. The energy system is again connected to the energy system of the European Union. All 3 nuclear power plants located in the unoccupied territory are working. In 1-2 days, they will be reach their normal plant power, and we expect that it will be possible to make planned outage schedules instead of emergency ones to our consumers.
At the same time, Ukrainians continue to prepare for possible power outages. As Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal reported, about 8,500 generators are currently imported per day. And in November, 136,000 generators of various types were delivered. They are worth almost $88 million. And this despite the fact that people started preparing for winter from summer, so we will withstand. A very important initiative was launched by our partners in the European Union. The European Parliament, together with European cities, launched the program called Generators of Hope. We expect cooperation with European business and local authorities to provide Ukraine with the energy equipment it needs now. It will be difficult for us without these. It is not easy for us. Just look at these photos. This is despite the lack of electricity and the probability of an impact. Our small business provides manicure services in the underground parking. But this is a gas station with electricity, and where parents brought their child in order to simply connect an inhaler. And this is a child's operation at the Heart Institute. Our doctors perform a complex operation under the lamps of ordinary flashlights. After all, it simply cannot be postponed or interrupted. In general, despite the power outages, our doctors are doing incredible things. As reported by the Ministry of Health, 9 transplants from posthumous donors were carried out in Lviv within 30 hours. In a little more than a day, transplant specialists transplanted 2 hearts, a liver, and 6 kidneys. Teams of almost 100 specialists worked for this. 2 kidney transplant operations were performed at the Cherkasy Regional Cancer Center. 2 transplants were performed almost simultaneously in the same operating room. And this is all while the electricity is off. It's good that most medical facilities have autonomous power on generators. But their fuel is not unlimited. Therefore, doctors had to do their work quickly, and so that it did not affect the quality of work. And so everyone in their place is doing everything possible to restore normal life for everyone as soon as possible.
There is no complete blackout. Yes, the energy system was torn apart, but we have a single one. It was torn into separate parts. Within 24 hours, it was merged back. Generation and distribution restored. It's a tough situation, but we are training for survival in the 21st century when we have a beast next to us. And naturally, in any case, Ukraine will take and do work every day, depending on the situation. Repair in this case. Do not shout, everything is lost, we need to think about evacuation, run away. No. We'll just repair.
Almost 4,500 invincibility centers are already working in Ukraine. These are places where there is electricity, water, and communication, also internet. And there will be more. Currently, the Ukrainian government is preparing and telling us about 3 possible scenarios in the energy sector after another Russian strike. The first option is a blackout on the left bank of Dnipro. This is possible if Russia concentrates missile strikes on the substations that transmit electricity from the west to the east of the country and hits the power plants of the left bank. The second scenario is a blackout of the entire country. It is possible if the Russian Federation launches a series of simultaneous massive strikes on power plants and substations across the country. In this case, Ukraine will remain connected to the European energy grid. The third option is the worst. This is a blackout of the entire country for up to 7 days. In the worst case, all nuclear plants will stop due to lack of load and will be able to resume full operation in just a week. We experienced how this could be during the last week's strike, when the units at the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants were turned off for several hours, and on Wednesday when the protection system at the South Ukrainian nuclear power plant were also activated. These power plants have not yet been able to fully resume their work, and as the former Minister of Fuel and Energy, Ivan Pochkov, said, this is the first global energy war. But the Ukrainians are sure that we will win it. After all, Russia uses terrorist means, only multiplied to the scale of a nuclear state, a permanent member of the UN Security Council. The Kremlin's goal is man-made and humanitarian disaster in Ukraine as a prerequisite for concessions of official Kyiv to the aggressor. But there won't be any.
We are contacting you. We know that you are being shelled, and I know that many of you are currently without electricity, without water, and without heat. But you still hold on, do not whine, do not begin to speak about treason, and this is how our fighting spirit rises. You are beautiful. Thank you for holding on. There will be no compromises. Everything will be only after victory.
You see how the military supports us, civilians, and we support them as much as we can. And in the end, all of us will win. More and more families of mobilized Russians are ready to protest. This has been reported by British intelligence. Mobilized Russians at the front in Ukraine are facing problems. First of all, because men are thrown into battle like cannon fodder, simply to determine the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Therefore, according to intelligence, the mobilized units are suffering serious losses. It is likely that a large number of recruits died or were injured while digging trenches under artillery fire around the town of Svatove, Luhansk region. In addition, some have serious chronic diseases. Also, the mobilized are thrown onto the battlefield during frontal assaults on the well-fortified Ukrainian defense lines around the city of Bakhmut. In particular, due to poor provision, training and unequal rights, it is not surprising, given that more and more often people are sent to the front from prisons. The British intelligence believes that such conditions will force Russians to protest. The Kremlin is likely to be concerned that more families of reservists are willing to risk arrest to protest their conditions in which their relatives serve, the report said. Let me remind you that the protest in Russia against the mobilization began with its announcement. Only these protests were not near state institutions, but near the border. Men were simply escaping the country. You can find a lot of information on social networks where a person was mobilized in Russia, and in 2 or 3 weeks the funeral document was already coming to his family. In your opinion, can a person from civilian life prepare for the military in such a period of time? Any military expert will say they cannot. Even if man previously served for 2 years in the army in the use, it takes about 3 months of retraining to completely restore all skills. But not in Russia. They can send soldiers immediately to the front because even at the beginning of the 20th century there was a popular phrase, women will birth more. This tactic was used in World War II and has not been abandoned even now. Women also went to protests, for example in Dagestan, Ichkeria and Buryatia. The largest number of Russian soldiers died in the Russian-Ukrainian war from these regions. Depressed regions, where almost the only possibility to earn money was in the army, are now simply losing their men. If such trends spread to other regions in Russia, the history of the beginning of the 20th century may repeat itself, when during the First World War soldiers decided that it is better to change the Tsar than to fight in unsatisfactory conditions for unclear goals. Even 4th Saturday of November in Ukraine is the day of memory of the victims of the Holodomor. In 1932-1933, the leadership of the Communist Party and the government of the USSR staged the genocide of the Ukrainian people by creating an artificial mass famine. Even now, 90 years after those events, the memory of what happened on the territory of Ukraine makes one's blood run cold. All the food they found was taken from people. They did not leave anything at all, regardless of anything. Not for small children, not for infirm parents. Most people simply did not survive the winter of 1933. At that time, in order to survive, people ate weeds, tree banks, pine cones, dogs and cats, and there were repeated reports of cannibalism. You know, I don't have enough words to describe what was happening in every village at that time. Just read the book The Yellow Prince by Vasil Barka or any other book about those events and try to feel it. Researchers still argue about the exact number of Holodomor victims. Based on statistical data and modern methods of demographic analysis, the approximate number of dead is almost 4 million people. However, for example, the Ukrainian Institute of National Remembrance assures that there were about 7 million died in Ukraine. After all, calculations are complicated by historical circumstances. In particular, at the hardest famine, it was forbidden to record the actual number of deaths. There was also a ban on recording the cause of death as hunger, so death certificates indicated from typhus, exhaustions, from old age. I would like to note that the Holodomor took place throughout the territory of Ukraine, controlled by Moscow, except for Crimea. In addition, Russian territories where native Ukrainians lived, Volga and Kuban, was under attack. There was also a mass famine in Belarus, in the southern Urals, in western Siberia and Kazakhstan, and this is used in the Kremlin for excuses. However, in Russia, the biggest losses were in villages where 6% of the population lives, and in Ukraine, where 41% lived. The largest number of Ukrainians died in modern Kharkiv, Kyiv, Poltava, Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Later, the territories where the most people died were settled by people from Russian territories. And now they increasingly shout that Russia and Ukraine are one country. I would like to point out that even in the 1930s and later, Moscow hid its crimes, and only thanks to some British journalists, such as Malcolm McGarridge and Gareth Jones, the true information reached Europe and the USA. However, the Kremlin still does not consider itself guilty of the genocide of Ukrainians. We still hear, it's not us. However, no matter how the Russians try to hide the truth, it will come out. I would like to note that today in Ukraine at the legislative level, only the genocide of 1932-1933 has the status of Holodomor. However, there were similar exterminations, only on a smaller scale, in 1921, 1923 and 1946-1947. Now the Russians decided not to starve us, but simply to come and kill Ukrainians. This is what the Russian army is doing in the occupied territories. This is what the Russian missile forces are doing. And those who cannot be reached by the deadly hand of the Kremlin, they are trying to kill them with strikes on power system. But our ancestors preserved in the fight against Russia, and we will preserve. That concludes today's video. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for our future videos. Subscribe to UATV English and goodbye.